Hello, my name is Monica Kretschmer, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Universal Women's Network. And this is the Woman of Inspiration podcast, where we speak with women who lead, inspire, and motivate. Today, it is my pleasure to be introducing Dr. Caroline Cole-Power. She is a human resources executive and industry-leading adult educator with over 20 years of experience in Canada and the US. She's the CEO of the Canadian HR Solutions, which spans 14 cities across Canada. Caroline has a long-standing history of serving on numerous boards, paying it forward as a mentor to advance women in business, and has won numerous awards, including the most recent, the 2022 Woman of Inspiration Inspire Award. We're looking forward to an amazing interview. We have lots of great stuff to talk about. So Caroline, welcome. It's great to have you.
Thank you, Monica. A real pleasure to be here. So thank you for having me. Again, everybody knows that my name is Caroline Cole-Power. I'm CEO of CHRS Group of Companies. CHRS Group of Companies is the parent company of Sensitivity Training Canada, Canadian HR Academy, Worldwide Workplace Learning, and we operate throughout Canada, and we do some work in the United States. I'm also Vice Chair of Credit Canada Debt Solutions. Credit Canada is Canada's longest standing and largest credit counseling agency. They exist to help people manage their debt situation so that they can have life. That's the organization's tagline. So thank you, and I'm looking forward to the conversation, Monica.
Well, thank you for clarifying. And we had a little conversation in the green room, and you have an extensive background in leadership roles, specifically executive level leadership roles with some of the top companies, that are international companies. And so I always like to start off by, talking about your career path and your journey, because we really, as women, whoever is listening to the podcast, whatever stage they are in their journey of leadership, everyone can take a little bit of wisdom from leaders like yourself. So Caroline, where did you start? You've got an extensive history of education as well. So where would you like to jump in? I mean,
I do. Thank you. And I'm happy. Thank you for the question, Monica. So I'll start really where it all starts, which is in the academy, which is in the classroom setting for many of us. And so I did an undergraduate degree at York University, the Schulich School of Business. For those of you who know York University in Toronto, my bachelor's degree is in human resource management. And then I went off to do an MBA in finance. And I did that at Wilfrid Laurier University, Lazaridis School of Business. And from there, landed with General Electric. Many of you have heard of GE through one of their leadership programs. And so I worked in GE Canada, and then I moved to GE's headquarters. GE Capital is the part of the GE that I worked for, GE Capital, the finance part of GE. So I joined, worked in GE Canada, then I went to their headquarters in the Stamford, Connecticut, GE Capital's headquarters in Stamford, Connecticut, on one of their leadership programs. Many of you know that GE is sort of the quintessential company for developing leaders. So many of you have heard of Jack Welch, Jeff Immelt. And so I joined when Jack Welch was still there as CEO, and worked throughout the United States, worked with colleagues in India, worked with colleagues in Japan, worked with colleagues in the UK, really global exposure to work and to people through the GE system. I then came back into the Canadian system with General Electric, and then from there joined Ernst Young and worked at Ernst Young as a senior manager level. And then from Ernst Young, I went to the Business Development Bank of Canada. I was vice president and area manager at BDC. My area was Halton, Niagara. And then from BDC, I went to BMO, so BMO Financial Group. So I wasn't in the retail banking system. I was in the corporate financial system at BMO, and I was in a senior leadership executive role at BMO. While I was at BMO, I started to teach part-time. And I remember I had always wanted to teach, but I didn't pursue a Bachelor of Education degree. I decided that I would start teaching part-time to adults. And I remember thinking about my teaching work as as a somewhat of a hobby. It felt like a hobby because I was not only because I was enjoying it, but because I remember that what they were paying me, and I chuckle about this when I think about it, because I remember that what they were paying me was not even enough to cover the parking. I remember that distinctly. But there was an interesting thing because I so loved the work that every time I drove up to campus, I taught on Wednesday nights from 7 to 10 p.m. And I remember driving up to campus and doing that work, somehow knowing that this was a path to something. I didn't know what the thing was that it was going to be the path to, but I just felt in my spirit, and I think that spirit piece is so important within us. I felt within my spirit that this was going to lead to something bigger. Didn't know what or how it was going to come together. But as it turns out, it absolutely is what was the direct line to getting me to doing what I do now with my work and with my business. And so that very first semester, was fall of 2006 is when I taught my first course, post-secondary. And the several other semesters after that, I did teach part-time, but I didn't teach every semester because it depended on what my corporate travel schedule was. So some semesters I would say yes to a section if the chair or the dean contacted me. Other semesters I wasn't able to. But that teaching whetted my appetite to moving into adult education, because at that point I was working in corporate financial services, doing learning and development work with 2 risk management groups. But that whetted my appetite. And so I then signed up at the University of Toronto, applied and got into University of Toronto's Faculty of Education, OIC. Some of you have heard of OIC. And took a Master of Education, second master's degrees, because I had an MBA. So I took a Master of Education degree, specializing in adult education at the University of Toronto. Did very, very well there. And that was my segue into really legitimizing myself in the adult ed space, because I had now a Master of Education degree from a top, arguably in some circles, the top school globally. U of T is that highly ranked for education for that particular degree. And so then I continued teaching part-time, and then I jumped over from corporate into higher ed and joined Ryerson. It's now Toronto Metropolitan University, as an associate program director at the Chang School. And I was then in that role, leading faculty, leading curriculum planning and curriculum design in conjunction with the Ted Rogers School of Management. So that was my leap from corporate into higher ed as an administrator. And then from there, I took another administrative role in the province of Nova Scotia as an academic chair of the Faculty of Business. So that was first university and then the college system. Then I came back into the Ontario system, and I was chair at Seneca College of the School of International Business. And so again, as a chair in a post-secondary institution, I was working with other chairs across the country, designing curriculum. I was working in my own college, managing faculty. Fast forward to in a very small nutshell, where I am today, where I decided to step out and launch a training company. So my organization, CHRS, which is, as we talked earlier, it's the parent of several other companies, does one thing only. The only thing that we do is training. But we train different audiences. And in order to speak to different audiences directly, we have different brands, and that's what the different brands are. And so that's what I'm doing today. That's my journey in a nutshell, a very small nutshell, from the start of my education to where I am today. And along the way, I've taken other degrees and up to the terminal degree level.
Fascinating. And that all took probably about 10 minutes. But in reality, it's taken a lifetime of achievement. And so there's a couple things that I want to peel back the layers on. And I didn't want to interrupt as you had a great flow going on, but I want to go back to a couple key points.
Sure.
Number one is when you were, on your path, what were some of those key pivotal points that really enabled you to step into your leadership? What were some of the things that benefited you as a leader to rise?
Benefited me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
benefits you, help support your leadership to rise. And I think I'll go back to the GE, you said that they really embrace leadership development for women. So what were some of those key things that you can go, yeah, that really helped me on my journey, that laid the foundation for my future leadership endeavors?
Yeah, I will tell you that. So when I moved into the GE system right out of MBA, I moved into a system where I was one of in every room, the only one in every room, just about in any work related meeting room. That was certainly the case in the Canadian system, and when I went out into the US, that was the case to a large extent. And not only was I often the only one in the US, I was different because I was from Canada. And when you're visiting the US, you don't see this, but when you're working and living in the US, you realize that Canada is seen as an international country, actually. And so one of the things that helped me then and still helps me to a certain degree today is my journaling practice. So I had to find a way to dip into reservoirs of strength. And so for me, journaling, writing, talking to self, getting to connecting with self helped me, whether it was in preparing for that big meeting that we're going to have tomorrow in Wall Street in front of shareholders, or whether it was going to speak with my colleagues about something I needed to, in many cases, power up the night before. So journaling. Another thing, you asked about one thing, but it's never really any one thing. It's an integrated approach. Another thing that was there then and still is and will always be a central part of who I am is my faith. And so in my case, people have different ways of looking at what faith might be for them, but for me, faith and understanding that there's strength there, I'm here for a reason here on earth, but here in this role for a reason. Things don't just happen. And that regardless of what the outcome is, it's all going to be okay, believing that. So journaling and tapping into faith. Those are two pieces that I absolutely leaned on back then and lean on still today. And of course, there is the work ethic piece. I mean, there's just my spirit tells me that there's no way around. Yeah. One has to do the work, and then one has to not only do the work, but one has to find people that one collaborates with to pick up where maybe you're not as strong, somebody else is stronger, and where you can be the strong person where that other person is weaker.
Beautiful. I love that faith in journaling, because it does have to, like, if you don't have that internal drive and that commitment and that vision, it kind of just stops, right? Yeah. So that's really important. Thank you for sharing. I also want to talk about sort of, you've made quite a few pivots. And so what is that point when you know it's time to pivot?
Yeah, I have for sure made a few pivots. So I started my career in a big way because I did work before, right? So it wasn't my very first job, but I did work before even going to do an MBA. But post MBA is where I sort of look at as the formal start of my career. Started my career in a largely, actually an entirely corporate financial type of setting. And I did very well, did well in Canada. And then, of course, because I was with the company, I was with GE in Canada, and did well enough that GE Canada agreed that I could be transferred to the States, US on this in this leadership program. So, you have to do well to be able to make that leap, right? So very successful, no issues. But I found that there came a point in my career where it wasn't about how good I was. It really wasn't. And I say this, and I Monica, I'm hoping your listeners and people who are watching can really see the genuineness of this. There came a point where whatever it was, whether it's my gender, whether it's my race, whether it's both, whether it's the fact that I was from Canada, whatever it was, there was no question about how good I was. And that was clear. But there were systems and structures in place that just said, not you. Not you. And of course, everyone was smiling, everyone was pleasant, everyone was beautifully dressed. But there's whether you call it the elephant or the jumbo jet that's in the living room that kind of gets you to see the picture, that was clear. So whether some people might call it a glass ceiling or a cement ceiling, I like to call it a cement ceiling. So I needed to figure out what I was going to do with my talent, because one of the things that my faith helped me understand was that I was talented. I didn't need anybody to tell me that. I knew I was talented. You know when you're talented, when your ideas and your points are being uttered through somebody else's mouth. You just told them the thing, you just showed it to them. But then when you say it, people are barely hearing it, but somebody else 2 seconds later says it, and oh, the room lights up. So I realized that I was talented. And so there came a point where I had to figure out what is going to be my platform for using my talent to my benefit. Of course, to benefit others as well, but so that I can get some credit and I can get the benefit. And so when I made the transition from corporate financial services to higher ed, that was what that play was about. I felt that, of course, looking at it from outside, the grass often looks greener. I felt that stage is going to be more open to somebody who looks like me. And I am not a woe is me person. I am not a woe is me, the world's, no time for that. But I also believe that there's some systems and structures you can't break down on your own. So if you can't go up if there's cement ceiling, go out the window, go around and go in that way. Understand? And so in my mind, let's find another way to do it. And so I shifted my platform from corporate financial services, Wall Street, button down pinstripe, which is I took a finance degree, right? That's what it was, to adult education. And yes, the academy is less forgiving, although it has its challenges as well.
Interesting. Great. I love that. If you can't get to it, go out the door, go around the corner, you create your own path.
Absolutely. You have to.
And I've got to tell you that of all of the women that I've ever spoken with over the years, like hundreds of women, it's never linear. It's always, it's a little bit like out the door, around the corner. I mean, the vision of where you're going, you're always going to get to where you are, but that path has never been linear.
Absolutely.
So very interesting. Okay, one other question, and I think I get a lot of questions about the transformation and the leadership journey, and even companies wanting to attract the right talent and leaders like yourself that are just that have so much to offer to a company. What was something that you were looking for? I mean, you worked for some pretty spectacular companies, but when you were out there looking for these companies, what was most important to you as a leader navigating your career?
Yeah. So when the first company, I actually joined from on-campus recruiting. So it's a little bit different because I was picked up early, even actually before I completed my degree, but I went through their process and then they held the job until I graduated. So it's a little different. But subsequent jobs, I always made sure that I considered joining a company that I saw people where I saw people who looked like me at the top or close to the top. And if there was an organization where that wasn't there, I would proceed very cautiously, because when you're the first of, especially into some of those very, very senior roles, it doesn't mean that you don't ever take the role. It just means that you have to be careful that you're not being set up for a glass cliff. What is a glass cliff? A glass cliff is when you're, and I'll use the word, catapulted into some very senior roles, but you're not provided the resources, you're not provided the supports, and it's literally a cliff, if you can picture a cliff, and you're standing, your role places you on the edge of that cliff, and because you're not supported, what happens? The cliff just breaks off. And the narrative will then be, so see, we did bring one in, but look at what happened. This is what happens when you bring them in. So I always wanted to look at organizations that there was evidence that there was the willingness, not the ability, but the willingness to invest in people like me at the top or close to the top.
Beautiful. So important. It's just like, don't set somebody up for failure, set them up for success.
Right.
And it sounds as though everybody takes that level of responsibility, but I think that even now more so in this day and age, companies need to be visible about their commitment to advancing women in leadership and commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion. So important. So
let me add one other piece, please, Monica. May
absolutely.
I? Sure. So, and to your point, it is, and I guess we're both kind of on the same song sheet. For those of you watching and listening, it's one thing for an organization to say, here's what we do believe, here's what we do. But it's quite another thing to yourself when you're looking at them, look at what they do, because that's where the rubber hits the road. Yeah, just wanted to add that piece in. So they'll tell you this, and sometimes you'll go onto websites and you'll see beautiful career pages, in our company, here's what we do. Nice, very nice. Let's see what you actually do. And how people, and not just who you've appointed, but what is the success rate of folks who look like me, whether it's gender, whether it's race, whether it's both. What's the success rate of people who look like me in your organization? Yeah.
Preach, girl, preach. I am all for that. And
well, I hope it's not preachy.
No, I just think that we should talk more about that is the point, is because there is a lot of chatter, not a lot of action. And, I see that I talk with companies all the time, and they have great programs, but I'm like, where are your leaders? I don't see visible.
And how are they doing? Yes.
How are they doing? Yeah. So anyways, yes, I could go on and on and on, but yeah, I think that is a great conversation to keep going, which we will continue to do. But I love all of these conversations. I love your authenticity and your willingness to share your knowledge. I want to talk about a couple things. Number one is, I know that you're really passionate about self-care. And one of the things that is super important, there's two things: support along that journey. So I'd love to know about that support system that helped you on that journey. Were you always fully supported behind the scenes? And, that's number one. Number two is how you personally managed your self-care so that, I look back to my days as a flight attendant. You put your own mask on first prior to assisting others. So what was that like with you? So let's start with the support network.
Sure.
That enabled you to follow your leadership path.
Yeah. So family is everything. Family is everything. I'm not suggesting that in a person's family, everyone's going to line up and be supportive, but in most families, if not everyone, there'll be some people who, regardless of whether they agree with your vision or whether they get it or whether they can really even relate to it, because depending on where some of our loved ones are in terms of their own life and their own story, they may or may not be able to relate to it. Regardless of what that looks like, knowledge of the fact that it's unconditional, they love me, they support me, knowledge of that to me has been a confidence booster. And so I've fortunately been able to have that level of base level of comfort and support. It is true, I will openly share that in my family, I may be an outlier. I guess I'm an outlier. I'm mincing words. I'm an outlier in terms of some of the achievement. In our family, some people people have done well, but not necessarily everyone's not necessarily done the same kinds of things. They've done well in their own way. But just knowing that there's that level of support, there's that level of open door, there's that level of we've got your back regardless. That's been a real source of support. In terms of self-care, and this is an area that I'm equally passionate about, family and self-care, here are some things that I want to speak with you about, Monica, and leave for everybody who's watching and listening. I very carefully manage how I use my energy. The use of my energy, because my energy is something that is intrapersonal. And for those of you watching and listening, I want you to think about it. Not interpersonal, intrapersonal. It's a resource within me. And so I have complete control over where I place my energy. So I manage that. a lot of people talk about managing their time. Managing your time, yes, but energy, because let me put it this way. I can spend 10 minutes on something, but my energy not be there. So where I place my energy. Secondly, I manage where I place my attention. So not just the energy, but the attention. Where is my attention? And along those lines, where I place my focus. Because the thing about it is, in our life today, there's so many things coming at us, all kinds of distractions for our time. And the more accomplished we are, the more people and things want a piece of it. And they're coming at you all the time and whatever. And it's not just now, along the way. And so the ability to focus, the ability to hold steady on something and move it forward. It doesn't mean you become a robot and you don't look at anything else. But to the extent that we can say to ourselves and be present and understand that that's not a priority, this is, and if I am doing something that doesn't line up with this, it actually is going to take a second place. This focus piece, and energy management piece, and attention management piece is paramount. It's paramount. For those of you watching and listening, if you think back to the days, if you were, a student at some point, and you think back to the days where you had an assignment or you had a big exam coming up or big things going on, and the Olympics are on TV or something's on. This is an exercise. I mean, that's very early stage in one's life and career, but this kind of practice of the management of your will to stay and do the work rather than flipping on the TV. And I guess for some people, it might be the, stay and do the work or grow the business rather than being on your phone all the time. So I will just sum it up to say, from a self-care perspective, I have had to, and still do every day, because now it's a part of who I am. It's just how I operate now. But I've had to master managing energy, managing attention, managing focus. How do I do that? What are my enablers? One, I move. I try to move every day. Some days, yes, I'm able to get a full, couple of workouts in. Maybe I do some strength and I do some cardio. Some days I'm able to do both. Other days, maybe it's just a 10-minute core, but there's movement. Some days, nothing, right? But there's a movement piece that I have in my life today. Absolutely important. It is, for me, it's now habit. And I'm glad, because I worked hard for it to become habit, because there were years when it wasn't. And it's never easy. It's not, working out's not easy. The hardest part's getting there, right? Getting on the bike or getting on the tread or getting whatever, or getting on the mat, right? But movement. And it used to be that movement for me was about looking great. And of course it's that, but now it's also about health, and it's also about, I care about it. So movement. So we're talking about enablers, right? In order to do the other piece. Movement. I have a meditation practice. Some people think you have to sit on the mat and meditate. You don't. You can put the meditation on and you can hop in the shower. And you're showering and you're meditating and you're listening and you're doing that. You can't, but you're breathing and you're right. And some people can hop in the tub, but I have a daily meditation practice. So I move, I meditate. And then the other piece that is an enabler for me is an attitude check. Folks, an attitude check. So you know what? I don't have to deal with this client who's a pain. No, I get to deal with this client. I am fortunate that this client has sought me out, and I get to be the one working with them. They're not a pain. I asked for it. I put myself out there. So my attitude, because you know what I say to myself, and I ask myself every day when I set up my business, now and then and now, if not this, then what else? Right? So I don't complain. I asked for it. I get it. Some days it's sailing smoothly. Other days it feels like work. But guess what? I get to do the work. Thanks, Monica.
Thank you. Reframing your words are so powerful. And what I love about this and I have another follow-up as well, actually a couple before we
Sure.
close off. I'm going to get every minute out of this session here.
My pleasure. Yeah.
Is that self-care isn't just about bubble baths, and it's really about, like, you put the nail on the head where we're both on the same path and journey, right? When you're reach a certain stage in your life and you know that I want to reach 100, what do I need to do today to get me to that stage where I am going to be living a healthy, fulfilling life that, like 100, it's a good goal, right? And, like taking care of your mind and your body and your spirit and making the right decisions and not being distracted so that you can get, like, it's discipline, but it's commitment to self. And so self-care is almost commitment to self.
And Monica, if you heard what I said, and I know you did, and others listening in the audience, self-care is all of what I said and what Monica just shared, but it's also about checking in with self and holding self accountable to having the right attitude. Right? We are not above it, right? We need to rein in some time. What's your attitude, right? Yeah.
So while we're on that topic, the recent news, of course, and we're going to date this podcast by talking about it right now, was Jacinda Ardern, who has announced that she's leaving her role as Prime Minister of New Zealand because she doesn't feel that she has enough in the tank. And so she went specifically to say that she is looking forward to maybe getting married, maybe spending more time with her kids.
Yeah.
There's a numerous, and specifically stating that everybody's going to come up with their own reason why she left, which, there already is. I mean, it's everybody's out there. The one that most people talk about is burnout. And so, I look at it as a leader in general at a high functioning leadership role. You're gonna reach that limit no matter whether you're a man or a woman or what that is, because it's 24/7, 7 days a week. And so, I would just love to chat with you a little bit about your perception of that announcement, because I myself was like, what a strong leader to know when you have reached a certain point where you're like, I need to hand it over to somebody else who can now finish that race for me. It's like running a marathon and you're doing a relay race. I'm going to give it to somebody that can go and take that on with new energy, because I know that I've reached my limit and I'm ready to do something else. So I want to know what your take is on that, and how burnout plays a role.
Yeah. And I'm not sure that I necessarily would characterize it. And I know you're not, Monica, characterizing it as burnout, but you're right that the voices are out there putting all kinds of labels on what and why she did what she did. I would just say, from what I saw and heard, like everybody else saw and heard, this is just, in my mind, this is a woman who's shifting priorities. And it's important. It is as important for us as leaders, wherever we are in our journey, to understand when to bring something into focus and prioritize it and double down on it, as it is to know when to shift it out of priority. And in my mind, there should be no judgment associated with when a person decides to do so. There should be no judgment, but I also think that for us as leaders, we should feel no pressure to conform to society's expectations of us. The person who decides when we decide to shift gears, if we do, is a sole person, right? You decide, and we should not feel any need to explain. We look at our lives, we decide with what we want to do, we decide what our goals look like and today, and maybe change our goals tomorrow, whatever we're doing. And there is no need to explain. That's another piece that we want to be sure people are picking up here. Once we are clear about what we're trying to do, we don't need to explain anything to anybody.
Beautifully said, because she said, this is my decision on what I need to do for me. And there was no explanation that she needed to offer.
And she doesn't need to, that's right.
And that to me was the most powerful message to all leaders. And, shift of priorities, your choice.
Full stop.
That's it.
Full stop. Let me add another piece. So here's the thing. so of course, I think many of us who are listening and watching, I'm sure early career, the story is you do something and you're explaining because you're hoping nobody's offended, and here's one of the things I've learned. Almost anything that you decide to do, you might have some people who agree, but you're going to have some people who have a problem with it. And so rather than twisting yourself into a pretzel to, explain and free yourself from that. Free yourself from that.
Beautiful.
Right? It's as long as your decisions and so forth are not decisions that are hurting other people physically or emotionally, or hurting other people in any way, make your decisions, and thoughtfully make your decisions, and prayerfully make your decisions, and move on.
Beautiful.
Lots of distractions, back to the focus piece, right? And energy management piece. We can always be spending our time going down rabbit holes, who's this, who's concerned. And we end up doing all of that and not getting to what we're trying to do.
Beautiful. 2 more quick questions.
Sure.
As you know, I'm really passionate about the allies and bringing men to the conversation who are champions for women. I believe that is that 50% of the population that we're going to need the support of to reach that equality. So
sure.
Who have been the support hers in your world?
Men. So men. Yeah. Well, as some of you would have likely read on the internet, I am a daddy's girl. My first love was my father. I love men. So that sounds kind of odd, but people understand what I mean from what I said earlier, that I'm not going to explain it. But no, I'm a daddy's girl, and love men and love people, but not the kind of woman who beats up on men and thinks men are horrible. No, love men. And so my father, the self-esteem that I have today, and I haven't said it earlier in the podcast, but it may have come through that it's been rough. I'm a Black woman, and it's walking into rooms where no one looks like you. It's all of the things I talked about. But a part of what got me through that didn't happen in the classroom. It happened when I was 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, and my father verbally and non-verbally, through the way he treated me, had me understand that I was worthy. My father gave me a gift that will serve me a lifetime, and that gift is self-esteem. Right? So I'm a daddy's girl who always felt special. So my father, I have a very supportive husband, very supportive husband, who's very flexible, supportive, absolutely. And so I would say those 2 men. I've had male mentors who, in addition to being men, are of a different race. And so when we look for mentors, there is nothing that says the person has to be your race. In fact, let me think back, I don't have a male mentor that's Black. But I've had male mentors who have supported my career, helped me open doors, created opportunities, who don't look like me, and they've been in my court. Absolutely. I've also had women mentors as well who don't look like me. I actually have never had a woman mentor who looked like me. I've had women role models like Maya Angelou, Melody Hobson. Melody Hobson is somebody, the wife of George Lucas, Star Wars. I really admire Melody a lot. And of course, Oprah.
Oh, of course, Oprah. That was my next question.
Oprah,
so,
yes.
Who are the women of inspiration that you admire?
Yeah. I will tell you a quick thing. So I remember very early career. This is before I went back to doing it, because I worked for a few years and then I went back into an MBA. Before I went back to my MBA, I was living on my own downtown Toronto, and I used to, now I'm dating myself. I had a VCR that I used to program to tape the Oprah show. And I would get home from work, make quick supper, sit down in my little bachelor apartment and watch Oprah every day. So Oprah for sure. And as I moved along, there are others as well. So Melody Hobson, for those of you who want to look her up, I like her style. I like her energy. Finance. She came up in finance, and she's CEO of a financial company now, and other women as well.
Fantastic. Well, I know we're at the short end, and I really want to thank you for being a part of this podcast and sharing your leadership wisdom and your journey. Of course, you've got a massive story. Caroline, it's just truly remarkable what you've accomplished, and you have still much to do. But we end our podcast with, what is your definition of a woman of inspiration?
I think a woman of inspiration is a woman who has made her way through tears and struggle, and notwithstanding that is standing and holding her place, and is looking behind her and beside her and pulling others along. And on that note, I want to share with everybody that I have just in the end of 2022 launched a 5-year bursary for racialized students at Wilfrid Laurier University. This is to support students because I feel that this is a good way for me to give back. So thank you, Monica, for the opportunity to tell that story and to say what my woman of inspiration is for me.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. And if people are, going, how can they learn more? What's the best way of contacting you?
Sure. So they can go to the website, cdnhr.com. That's C as in David, N as C as in Canada, D as in David, N as in Nancy. So Canadian for short, cdnhr.com. And you'll see a phone number, top right-hand corner. You can give me a call there, or you can go to the web box and drop a note in, and it'll come directly to our team, and I will be able to hear that and see that you reached out and contact you.
Beautiful. Well, thank you again for sharing. And we're looking forward to the journey ahead. Of course, we are honored. We're, tickled to have you, whatever word that is, but we're thrilled to have you a part of the Universal Women's Network, and to be able to honor you as a woman of inspiration. So thank you for your leadership, and I look forward to the journey ahead.
Thank you, Monica. Pleasure. Bye-bye, everybody.